I want to tell you about the moment I learned that the people you trust the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. It was the day my own sister looked me in the eye and helped her husband steal my future. My name is Cararisa. I'm 34, a financial analyst in Chicago, and for 5 long years I lived with a single goal, a dream home, not a mansion, just a beautiful, cozy brownstone in Lincoln Park, a place with character, with history. A place to put down roots. To get there, I made sacrifices. I drove a 10-year-old Honda. I brought my lunch to work every single day while my colleagues ordered out. I said no to vacations, to expensive nights out. I bought my clothes from thrift stores. My friends sometimes called me boring, and honestly, they weren't entirely wrong, but I didn't care, because every penny I saved was another brick in the foundation of my future. Every no I said was a yes to the life I truly wanted. After 5 years of this, of relentless saving and dreaming, I did it. I had $87,000 sitting in my savings account. My real estate agent, Diane, had found the perfect place. It was everything. I could already picture myself drinking coffee on the front steps. This was it. This was my moment, and then came the family reunion. It was at my parents' lake cabin in Michigan, a tradition. I almost didn't go. The timing was terrible with the house offer pending, but family was important to me, despite everything. I should have listened to my gut. The second I pulled up, I knew something was off. My brother-in-law, Brandon, a guy who usually couldn't be bothered to give me the time of day, was suddenly my best friend, all smiles. Let me get your bag. He was wearing a watch I knew cost thousands. Brand new phone. My sister, Tiffany, was acting jumpy, nervous. She couldn't look me in the eye. At dinner, I made the mistake of sharing my excitement. I told my cousin about the house and Brandon. He slid right into our conversation. He was suddenly so interested. Wow, congratulations. So, the money for the down payment, it's all ready to go, all in one account. It felt weird, him being so specific. But I was just so happy I brushed it off. Later that night, he came up to me. Hey, my phone died. I need to check something for work. Can I borrow yours for a second? I didn't think twice. I handed him my unlocked phone. My mom called me into the kitchen to help, and I was gone for maybe 15 minutes. When I came back, he just casually handed me my phone back. Thanks. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed my banking app was open. I thought, that's strange. I figured I must have opened it by mistake. A glitch. I was so stupid. The rest of the weekend was actually nice. For a moment, it felt like old times. Tiffany even went for a walk with me. When we said goodbye, she gave me this long, tight hug. Drive safe, she whispered. I thought she was just being sentimental. I drove back to Chicago feeling hopeful. Maybe things were changing. Maybe family really could get through anything. I had no idea that at that very moment, my entire life savings were already gone. Monday morning, I made coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, my heart pounding with excitement. This was the day. I called my realtor. Diane, I'm ready. Let's do this. I hung up, opened my banking app to transfer the money, and the world stopped. My balance, $3,211.28. I stared. I closed the app. I opened it again. It couldn't be right. My hands started to shake. I pulled up the transaction history. 3 transfers, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, $29,000 each time, all to accounts I'd never seen before. My entire body went numb. I felt physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. This was fraud. It had to be. I called the bank, my voice trembling. The woman on the phone was calm, professional. She said the transfers were made from my registered device with my correct login. And then she asked the question that shattered my reality. Was there any time over the weekend when someone else had access to your unlocked phone? And it all came crashing down. Brandon, borrowing my phone. The banking app being open. His specific questions, the new watch, the new phone. Tiffany's new diamond bracelet. They didn't just take my money. They stole my dream. They stole my home. I tried calling Tiffany. Straight to voicemail. Brandon. No answer. In a panic, I called my mom. Oh, honey. Yes, Tiffany and Brandon stopped by this morning. You should see their new SUV. Brandon said his big investment finally paid off. They're even talking about a vacation. Each word was like a knife. A new SUV, a vacation, with my money. My best friend, Julia, was the one who said what I couldn't. Carissa, this is a crime. You have to call the police, now. But their family, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. That makes it worse, she said, her voice firm, not better. So I got in my car and I drove to their house, 2 hours of cycling between heartbreak and pure rage, and there it was, sitting in their driveway, a brand new black Cadillac Escalade, my down payment on 4 wheels. I walked to the door and rang the bell. Brandon answered, that smug look already on his face. Back for more drama. He sneered. I walked right past him. Tiffany was in the living room, surrounded by shopping bags from designer stores. She looked guilty for a second, then defensive. I laid it all out, the money, the transfers, the phone. And that's when Brandon dropped the friendly act completely. The mask came off. His face turned cold. He crossed his arms and said, "So what if we did?" I felt the air leave my lungs. He actually said the words, "We needed it more than you." You're single, no kids. You can just save it up again. I turned to my sister, my own flesh and blood. Tiffany, how could you? And you know what she said. You always had it easier than me, Carissa. Everything came so easy for you. You don't know what it's like to struggle. I was staring at a stranger. Then Brandon laughed. A cruel, mocking sound. It's not stealing when it's family. It's redistribution. He gestured around at all their new stuff. Besides, if you were so smart with money, you'd have better security on your phone. You practically handed it to us. Something inside of me broke, and in that break, something new forged, something solid, something strong. I looked at them. My sister and this man she'd chosen. And I said, I'm going to the police. Brandon's face darkened. You do that and we'll tell the whole family how selfish you are. Choosing a house over family. Who do you think they'll believe? The difficult, uptight sister, or the one with the cute family who just needed a little help? They laughed as I walked out the door, but I wasn't broken, not anymore. I was furious. With Julia's support, I hired a lawyer. I gathered evidence, phone records, security footage from the cabin that showed Brandon on my phone, their social media posts bragging about their windfall. I built a case brick by brick, and a week later I went back. This time I wasn't crying. I was calm. I gave them one last chance. Return the money. Now, Brandon just laughed in my face. You're so dramatic. And that's when the first knock came. A loud, firm bang on the door. It flew open. Police officers. A fraud investigator from my bank. My lawyer. The look on their faces. The sheer panic. It was almost worth the pain. My parents and my aunt and uncle showed up right on schedule, just in time to see Brandon being read his rights, and Tiffany. She completely broke down. Sobbing, she pointed at Brandon. It was his idea. He planned it all. He said you'd just save it again. It was a confession right in front of everyone. The aftermath was messy. Brandon was charged. He took a plea deal. The court ordered him to pay back every cent plus damages. He got probation. Their marriage collapsed under the weight of the consequences. Tiffany moved back in with my parents. Our relationship, it's complicated. We're in counseling, trying to rebuild something from the wreckage. She admitted she was always jealous of me, that she felt like she was always failing in comparison. My parents, they finally saw the truth. They apologized for not believing me, for always enabling her. It was a reckoning for our whole family. It took months, but I got my money back. Not all at once, but it came, and I started house hunting again. The perfect brownstone was gone, of course, but I found another house. It's smaller, different, but it's mine, and when I hold the keys, they don't just represent a house. They represent a battle I fought for myself, and I won. This whole nightmare taught me the most painful, but most important lesson of my life, that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. That protecting your boundaries is an act of self-respect. And that sometimes the family you choose, the friends who stand by you without hesitation, can be more your family than the one you're born into. The people you trust the most can indeed hurt you the deepest, but you know what? They don't get to define your story. You do, and my story was just getting started. Getting the keys to my new house was one of the most bittersweet moments of my life. I stood on that porch, and instead of pure joy, I felt this heavy victory. I had won, but I'd lost so much to get there. My trust, my naivety, the way I saw my own family, it was all gone. Money started trickling back in through the court-monitored payment plan. Brandon's precious Escalade was sold. So were the designer clothes and the jewelry. Every time a payment hit my account, it wasn't a relief. It was a reminder, a little scar healing over. Living in the new house was strange. At first, the silence was different from my apartment. It was my silence in my space, but for the first few weeks, I'd walk through the rooms, and instead of seeing the potential, I'd see Tiffany's tear-streaked face. I'd see Brandon's smug sneer. My dream home felt haunted by their ghosts. Julia was a saint. She'd come over with pizza and paint samples, forcing me to look forward, not back. "This is your kingdom, Cararissa," she'd say. "Don't let them be the ghosts in your walls. Evict them." So I started to build, not just furniture, but new memories. I had a small housewarming. My colleagues came, my neighbors, and yes, my parents came, and Tiffany. That was the first time I'd really seen her since the day the police showed up. She looked smaller, the confidence. The glamour she'd always clung to was gone. She brought me a plant, a simple, low-maintenance succulent, and she couldn't even look me in the eye when she handed it over. "Thank you," I said. It was all I could manage. The air between us was so thick with everything unsaid, you could barely breathe. We started family counseling a week later. Just me, her, and a therapist named Dr. Evans, and let me tell you, those first sessions were brutal. It was like emotional surgery without anesthesia. Tiffany would cry. I would sit there, stiff, my arms crossed, a wall of resentment. I wasn't ready to forgive. I was just there to understand. And then, in our third session, she said it. The thing that finally made a crack in my anger. She looked at me, her hands shaking, and said, "I was always so jealous of you, Carissa." I almost laughed, jealous. Of what? My 10-year-old Honda, my thrift store sweaters. Of your strength. She whispered, "You never needed anyone. You had a plan. You were so capable." I felt like I was constantly drowning, and you were just gracefully swimming ahead. It was easier to be mad at you for that than to admit I was failing. Dr. Evans let the silence hang in the room, and for the first time I saw it. Not an excuse for what she did. Nothing could ever excuse that, but a reason, a glimpse into the broken, insecure person she'd become, the favorite, who was actually terrified of being a failure. It didn't magically fix things, but it changed the conversation. We weren't just talking about the $87,000 anymore. We were talking about a lifetime of roles we'd been cast in, the responsible one, the pretty one, the one who had to be fine, and one who always needed to be rescued. My parents were trying too, my dad especially. He'd call me just to talk about the bears or the weather, but I could hear the guilt in his voice. He offered me money again, a significant amount to help me get settled. I knew what it was a penance. I thanked him, but I said no. "Dad, I need to do this myself. I need to know that I can." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he said, "I am so proud of the woman you've become." And he meant it. It was the first time I felt like he was seeing me, not just the daughter who never caused trouble. Meanwhile, Brandon was on the outskirts, doing his community service and making his payments. I heard through the grapevine he was living in a crappy apartment, blaming everyone but himself. I felt nothing for him, not anger, not pity, just nothing, and that, in its own way, was a kind of freedom. About 6 months in, something shifted. Tiffany got a job, a real one, as a receptionist at a dental office. It wasn't glamorous, but she was sticking with it. She was paying her own bills. In one of our sessions, she told me about setting up her own savings account for the first time. There was a flicker of pride in her eyes. It was a small thing, but it was hers. I realized then that my sister wasn't just the villain in my story. She was a victim in her own. A victim of Brandon's manipulation, sure, but also of a lifetime of being told she wasn't capable. We were both unlearning the lies we'd been told about ourselves. One Saturday, She came over to my house to help me build a bookshelf. We didn't talk about the theft or the counseling. We just fumbled with the instructions, laughed when we put a piece on backwards, and ordered a pizza. It was normal, it was fragile, but it was a start, the final payment from. Restitution came through on a bright, sunny Tuesday. I transferred it directly into my mortgage account, paying down a big chunk of the principal. It felt like a circle finally closing. The money was home, and more importantly, I was home. I still have my guard up. I have two-factor authentication. On everything, my phone never leaves my sight, but it's not a prison anymore. It's just wisdom. So if you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own family betrayal, let me tell you what I learned on the other side. The pain doesn't completely go away. You just make room for it. You learn to live alongside it and fighting for yourself. It's exhausting and it's terrifying, but it's the only thing that truly sets you free. You don't have to choose between being the villain in their story or the victim in your own. You can just write a new book, and sometimes, if you're lucky and you both do the work, you can even let someone else hold the pen for a chapter or two. A year to the day after I closed on my house, I did something I never thought I'd do. I invited my parents and Tiffany over for Thanksgiving, just the four of us. No big, chaotic family reunion. No performances, just us. The night before, I was a wreck. Julia came over and found me staring into an empty fridge, convinced the whole thing was a catastrophic mistake. What if it's awkward? I asked her, my voice tight with anxiety. What if we just sit there in silence, chewing, with the ghost of $87,000 sitting at the table with us? Julia handed me a glass of wine. Then you eat in silence, she said. Simple as that. You're not hosting the Family Reconciliation Awards. You're just serving turkey. Lower the bar, Cararisa. Put it on the floor. So I did, and you know what? It was awkward. For about the first 20 minutes, my mom was trying too hard. My dad was too quiet, and Tiffany kept looking at me like she was waiting for me to change my mind and ask her to leave. But then I burned the rolls. Smoke poured out of the oven. The fire alarm started screeching this ear-splitting beep, and we were all scrambling, waving towels at the detector, frantically opening windows in the November cold. And in the middle of the chaos, we all started laughing. Not polite laughter. Real, helpless, can't breathe laughter. It was the kind of mess that happens in real families, not the perfect Instagram-ready kind, but the kind where things go wrong and you deal with it together. That broken moment, it fixed something, the tension just evaporated. We ate our slightly smoky dinner, we talked about normal things. My dad's golf game, my mom's book club, Tiffany's new boss at the dental office who she actually liked. For a few hours, we weren't defined by the theft. We were just a family, a different, more fragile, more honest family than we'd ever been before. That night, after they left, Tiffany texted me. It just said, "Thank you for today. I know it wasn't easy. I looked around my house. It was warm. It was safe. It was mine. And for the first time, it felt completely, 100% like a home, not a fortress." The work with Dr. Evans continued, but the focus shifted. We weren't just excavating the past anymore, we were building a new blueprint for the future. We talked about how to set boundaries without building walls, how to be supportive without being a safety net. It was like learning a new language with my sister, one built on respect instead of resentment. One of the biggest surprises came from my mom. She started seeing her own therapist. She told me she needed to understand why her instinct was always to fix things for Tiffany, even when it made everything worse. She said, "I thought I was being a good mother. I see now I was just being an easy one." That level of self-awareness, it healed a wound in me I didn't even know was still bleeding. As for Brandon, his final restitution payment cleared the court system. The legal chapter was officially, completely closed. I heard through a cousin that he moved to another state. The news brought no feeling of victory, just a quiet, final sense of closure. He was a lesson I'd learned, a storm I'd weathered, but he was no longer a character in my story. Life as it does just went on. I got a promotion at work. I planted a garden in my backyard. I went on actual vacations. Nothing extravagant, just trips where I read books on a beach and didn't feel guilty about spending a single dime. I was living my life for me. Then, about 2 years after the reunion that shattered everything, Tiffany asked me to meet her for coffee. She had something to tell me. My mind raced with 1,000 possibilities, most of them bad. Was she getting back with Brandon? Was she in trouble again? I got to the cafe, and she was already there, looking nervous but bright. She didn't beat around the bush. I'm dating someone. She blurted out, his name is Mark. He's an electrician. He's normal. She showed me a picture on her phone, a guy with a kind smile, standing next to a truck with his company's logo on it. No flash, no pretense, and she took a deep breath. I told him everything about Brandon, about the money, about what I did to you. My heart stopped. You did. What did he say? Tiffany's eyes welled up, but she was smiling. He said, that sounds like a really hard time. I'm glad you're on the other side of it now. And in that moment I saw it, the weight she'd been carrying, the shame. It wasn't gone, but someone was helping her carry it. She had found her own person who saw her, not as the pretty, helpless one, but as someone who was capable of making mistakes and, more importantly, capable of growth. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I'm happy for you, Tiff. Really, and I meant it. That's the part of the story they don't always tell you about betrayal. The happy ending isn't always about getting everything back. Sometimes it's about what grows in the empty spaces after the storm has passed. It's about a newfound strength you never knew you had. It's about the quiet understanding in your father's eyes. It's about your mother learning to hold her tongue. It's about your sister becoming a person you can actually have a relationship with, not out of obligation, but out of genuine choice. My dream house wasn't the brownstone in Lincoln Park. It was this life I built, with its smoky Thanksgivings and its awkward coffees and its hard one piece. It was a life where I finally, truly believed that I was worth fighting for, and let me tell you, that's a foundation that no one can ever steal. They say time doesn't heal all wounds, but it does teach you how to live with the scars, and after a couple of years, my scars and I had reached a kind of understanding. They were a part of my history, but they weren't my entire story anymore. Life settled into a new, gentle rhythm. My house stopped feeling like a new possession and started feeling like my skin. I knew which floorboards creaked, exactly how the morning sun would hit the kitchen table, and that the faucet in the guest bathroom needed a specific jiggle to stop it from dripping. It was imperfect, and it was perfectly mine. My relationship with Tiffany, it evolved. It was never going to be what it was when we were kids, braiding each other's hair and whispering secrets in the dark. That innocence was gone, and maybe that was okay. What we built in its place was something sturdier, built on honesty and choice. We had our monthly sister dates. Sometimes it was coffee, sometimes a movie. We talked about work, about our parents, about her dating Mark, who was, as promised, wonderfully, blessedly normal. He fixed things. He showed up when he said he would. For Tiffany, that was a revolution. One afternoon, we were at my house, sorting through a box of old childhood photos our mom had given me. We were laughing at bad haircuts and questionable fashion choices, and then Tiffany went quiet. She was holding a picture of the two of us, maybe 10 and 8 years old, building a fort in the living room. We were a good team, she said softly, tracing the edge of photo with her finger. I looked at the picture. My arm was thrown around her shoulders, both of us grinning, covered in blankets and pillows. We were, I said. She looked at me, her eyes serious. I'm sorry, Carissa. Not just for the money, for all of it. For letting you be the strong one for so long that I forgot how to be strong myself. It was an apology that landed differently. It wasn't about the single act of theft anymore. It was about the lifetime of dynamics that led to it. And for the first time, I felt the last of my resentment simply release. It didn't vanish, but it lost its power over me. I know, I said, and I forgive you. And I finally truly did. My career flourished. The same meticulous nature that had helped me save for that down payment made me an exceptional analyst. I was put in charge of mentoring new hires. I found myself teaching them not just about portfolio management, but about financial boundaries, about the importance of protecting your own future with the same diligence you protect a client's. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had become an expert in personal financial security precisely because Mine had been so violently breached. One of the most profound changes was in my relationship with my parents. The old patterns of favoritism and enabling were gone, replaced by something more authentic. They saw Tiffany standing on her own 2 feet, and they saw me not as the infallible one, as a human being who had been deeply hurt. We could just be together, no walking on eggshells, no unspoken tensions. On my 36th birthday, my dad handed me a small, clumsily wrapped gift. It was a framed charcoal sketch of my house. "Did you draw this?" I asked, completely stunned. He shuffled his feet, looking embarrassed and proud all at once. "Your mother signed me up for a class, said I needed a hobby. Thought you might like it." I looked from the beautiful, detailed drawing to my father's face, and my eyes filled with tears. It was the most thoughtful gift he had ever given me. It wasn't expensive, it was personal. It meant he saw me. He saw my home, my sanctuary, and he'd taken the time to capture it. That drawing hangs in my hallway now. It's the first thing you see when you walk in. As for love, well, that was a frontier I'd been hesitant to explore. Trusting a man after Brandon felt like a monumental task. But Julia, ever the optimist, eventually convinced me to let a friend set me up. His name was David. He was a history teacher. On our first date over pizza, I decided to test the waters. I told him the story, not the whole, raw, YouTube script version, but the condensed one. I had a falling out with my sister a few years back over some money. It was a whole thing. "We're okay now." He listened, nodded, and took a bite of his pizza. "Family stuff is the hardest stuff," he said simply. "It's great that you worked it out." He didn't probe for salacious details. He didn't look at me with pity. He just accepted it as a part of my history, and in that acceptance, I felt a lock click open inside me. David is steady. He's kind. He loves my house almost as much as I do, and he never, ever makes me feel like my carefully built boundaries are a challenge to be overcome. The other day, we were all together, me, David, my parents, Tiffany, and Mark. We were in my backyard for a summer barbecue. I was standing at the grill, and I just stopped for a second. I watched them all. My dad and David were debating some obscure historical battle. My mom and Tiffany were laughing at something, their heads close together. Mark was dutifully following Julia's instructions on how to arrange the patio lights. It was loud and messy and perfect. I thought back to the woman sobbing on her couch, her dream in ashes, convinced her life was over. I wanted to tell her, just wait. Hold on. The story isn't finished, because the happy ending wasn't about getting my money back. It wasn't even about getting my sister back. The happy ending was becoming the kind of woman who could host this barbecue, a woman who had fought for her peace and won, a woman who had rebuilt her family not out of obligation, but out of love and conscious choice, a woman who was no longer just the responsible one, but was finally completely herself. The betrayal was a fire that burned my old life to the ground, and from that ashes, I built something new, something stronger, something that was truly unshakably mine. So that's my story. If you had told me in the middle of that nightmare that I would end up here, I never would have believed you. I thought I was fighting to get my old life back, but I was wrong. I was fighting to build a new one. The money came back, the legal boxes were checked, but the real victory was quiet. It was in my dad's drawing of my house. It was in my sister's eyes when she told me about her normal, kind boyfriend. It was in the smoky, laughter-filled Thanksgiving that was more real than any perfect holiday we'd ever had. Betrayal didn't just break me, it broke me open. It forced me to look at everything, my family, my choices, my own worth, and decide what I wanted to rebuild, and I rebuilt it all with stronger materials, with boundaries, with self-respect, with the understanding that family isn't a free pass to hurt you, it's a privilege to be in your life. That dream house I wanted so badly. I thought it was a brownstone in Lincoln Park, but my dream house turned out to be the life I built inside these four walls. A life where I am safe, I am respected, and I am loved for who I am, not for what I can't provide. If you're going through your own version of this, if you're staring at a betrayal that feels like the end of your world, I'm here to tell you it's not. It's a brutal, painful beginning. Your job isn't to just survive the storm. Your job is to learn to dance in the rain that's left behind, to plant a garden in the mud. It won't be easy. There will be days you'll want to give up, but please keep going. Fight for your peace. Protect your boundaries like your life depends on it, because your happiness does. The most beautiful part of my story wasn't the downfall, it was the comeback, and yours is waiting for you, too. Thank you for listening to mine.